What I'd like to do now is bring up on stage Lance Fisher. Now, Lance is the CIO of S3. And what I think Lance is going to bring to us now is that reality check and that thought around, well, we've been talking about the CIO's perspective, we've been talking about the CMO's perspective. Now, it's the technology is the engine to this growth. It's the engine to us transforming our business. I'm very pleased to have Lance with us. Lance has recently been voted as ICT European CIO of the Year. So he's got a great deal of experience and understanding of how to use technology to transform businesses. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Lance on stage.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. Normally I get up and I talk in front of IT people. I do things for vendors and things. So I have to say I've got a much better looking audience in the old marketeers. I quickly wanted to go through my company I work for, S3, the most famous recruitment company that no one's ever heard of. But you would have heard of the brand. I want to talk a bit about me, naturally. And I want to talk a lot about pulling together some of the key things that are certainly transforming IT and the forces. S3, we are a global recruitment company. You might not have heard of S3. We're a UK PLC. But you would have heard of the brand. So we originally started as Computer Futures way back in 1986, which is our ICT brand. So we recruit IT people. So if you ever need Java programmers or .NET programmers, we're the people to see. But then we went into different sectors. So we went into pharma, which is our real staffing brand. We went into Progressive, which is our oil and gas brand. And then we went into Energy, Engineering, Progressive, and Banking is our Huxley brand. So we've taken these 4 brands and then we've gone global. It's all the same technology. We have a lot of offices. We have a lot of recruitment consultants. We do things in volume, so we're heavily dependent on technology. So to give you some of ideas of some of the volumes we got. My background's always been finance. So one of the things I was European CIO of ICAPS, leading interdealer broker, CIO of FTSE's data and index company, and you start to see a theme. I'm passionate about data, and the reason I'm a CIO is, for me, the I stands for information. It's all about data and how we did it, and how you change your business with data. I moved into the finance sector because I could see you can trade being a recruitment consultant. Essentially, I see you've got a client and a candidate, you match them, you execute a trade. So I look at it from a different perspective. So working in a company that's very innovative and quite entrepreneurial, they are serial recruitment consultants, but they've grown up with the company. So all of my exec, other than the CFO, all grew up in one of the brands, all understand the recruitment industry in detail, and therefore we've mixed the DNA a bit. So I've come in and said, actually, I can trade this. Reality is it's a people business, and recruitment consultants recruit on relationships, but a lot of what we do, you can automate. So I'll give you a few flavours because it's about scale. So like we will process 200,000 CVs, candidates. We have 4 million active CVs just in our IT brand. In the UK, across Europe, we'll have 11 million CVs on our database of IT professionals. We talk to 117 job boards constantly. We will send out to our clients, hiring managers, 20,000 to 30,000 CVs a month. We're constantly interviewing 30,000 to 50,000 people. So essentially what we're doing, we're advertising, we're just talking to a client, finding out the job. We then figure out what skills that person's looking for. We have a massive amount of data, and our data is our key asset. Our data and our relationships are that's our IP. We essentially can mine any candidate from our data. And we've always had this technology. We work heavily with key vendors like Oracle. All our back office is SAP. So we've built industrial strength software. And it's all aimed at to find the candidate quicker than anyone else. That's our forte. You come to us to find the difficult, hard to find candidate, and we'll find them quicker than anyone else. So what do we do? So we're quite technically enabled. So you're sitting there saying, great, job's done. Job's done. We've got all the best technology, and we constantly compare it to our competitors. We constantly look at the industry. We've got a niche position. We've grown globally. We've made lots of money, and everybody's happy. Job done. But it didn't. It started to change. And the thing is, if I look at a CIO, and I think you've heard it from some of the other speakers, if you look at what is the I in CIO, so I've said here it's about information and it's about data. And for me, that information, whether you look at it, is about analytics, potentially about big data. If I talk to a lot of my peers, the I is IT director. So they tend to think of, or the I is infrastructure. So a lot of what people are doing, you can quite easily go to the CIO community and say, actually, you call yourself a CIO, but actually you're an IT director and you're looking after infrastructure. And if you're looking after infrastructure, I totally agree with Chris. You might as well get your coat on and go home, because that's all going to cloud. That's all keeping the lights on. It's about cost control. It's about working for the CFO. It's about every day, why can't you do that cheaper? Why have I got a 69 pence app on here and you're selling me £1 million SAP systems? You know, what's the difference? So you've got to. You're never going to get anywhere in that regime. So you've got to start to reinvent the CIO. So the CIO is about information, and I would suggest it's starting to talk about innovation. How can you use this technology to do things better? How can the technology help you improve revenue rather than looking at cost? And therefore, how can you make more profit by increasing revenue? By using your data and by using technology. The industry is changing, so I totally agree that the marketing side is changing, but it's changing quite radically for the IT guy. This is a nice circle. I like circles. But this is from Gartner. Gartner called this the nexus of forces. You'll see the same themes. Those are 4 forces, essentially. You've got social, mobile, we've heard about, cloud, and information. Now, sometimes you'll see these interchanged, and sometimes people change it. So sometimes I've seen this analytics. I've seen it described as big data. Analytics I quite like because that's SMAC, so that's SMAC. So that means I'm a smack head because I keep talking about this constantly. But this is about big data. Mobile, you can see interchange with consumerisation. But those forces are quite key. And I just want to spend a little bit of time taking from certainly from a CIO perspective, what those 4 forces mean. So, and put it in a bit of context of S3. So social, for S3, social is about recruitment. So obviously LinkedIn will play a big space into this. I spend a lot of time talking to LinkedIn. Where is LinkedIn going? What have they got? Can I augment it with the data we've got? Can I augment it with the history of people we've got, of CVs? Very interesting. We use our biggest recruitment for internally is Facebook. We figured out that the best people, the best recruitment consultants that we can fetch in are recommendations from recruitment consultants that already work for us. They'll recommend us to their friends, and that's the easiest way we find of recruiting new recruitment consultants. Twitter, messaging out brands, messaging out what we're trying to do as Twitter. So again, you're seeing increasingly we're using these channels, and in fact, your reputation is coming in. I don't do a lot with social. I work with LinkedIn, but to me, one of the things you've got to start to divide and conquer, especially as an exec. So I clearly see the CMO is owning social. If you look at mobile, again, that's transforming. I mean, I wanted to show you this because over the weekend I was running to the airport and I dropped my iPad. So I done the classic and smashed the corner, which I then duly repaired with a bit of sellotape. Now, you can send this away. I can send this away, 48-hour service. If I pay another £10, £54, and they'll replace the screen and the digitizer. The problem is, I've got to let go of it to send it away. It's like I'm sitting there going, when am I going to find 48 hours where I can send it away? Because I've become completely dependent on that. As a technologist, I'm completely dependent on the technology. Because everything I've done, I use it for. I've got my Good app, which is my corporate email, has replaced my BlackBerry. So all my corporate emails on there, my presentations are on there. I use Evernote to create notes while I'm on the road. All of the applications, FaceTime my kids when I'm traveling, everything I'm using is on there. And that's how it's transformed. So you've moved to an environment where this has become, this is a driver. Your users are saying, well, we have better technology. I constantly go in for the people that work for me and say, actually, this technology we run, this infrastructure, often there's better stuff out there, there's better stuff that we can use, there's better stuff that we can fetch in. You know, I'm sick of the old email systems. We should all use Gmail. So, you know, this is changing, it's changing quite rapidly. I think there's some numbers. So the other reason I haven't replaced it is Apple is supposed to announce the iPad 5, aren't they, soon? Rumour has it could be next week. So that to me is quite key, and I'm obviously going to get the new one to do that. Apple shipped 138 million, 58 million iPads were shipped in 2012. In 1 year they shipped 125 million mobile phones. So this is changing quite rapidly. And the technology and the ability to have apps is quite key. The cloud is where your old IT director has to really seriously worry about his future, because a lot of the infrastructure that we're running just goes to the cloud. It is completely cost effective. If you look at the investments that Microsoft are doing with Azure, you look at Google, you look at Amazon, you look at SAP, now call themselves a cloud company, Oracle, Salesforce, all the big ERP software. Everybody's investing heavily in cloud. You just look at the investment that's going on in all of those. It's probably about 50 billion last year alone, and this year. It is inconceivable that everybody has to go to the cloud. Has to go. There's no other alternative. Even people that say that we still need our own data, and we still need to protect our data, yes, in certain industries where data is critical, but increasingly it will be the cheapest option, because the infrastructure will be all running in the cloud. So you say you need a strategy for cloud. Information is where we play into it, though. So I think as an organisation, certainly in S3, we went through some challenges. As those media channels start to own up, the first question that we sort of saw as an exec was, well, who owns social media? And it's very clear, the CMO owns social media. Who owns data? I own the data. It's information. And when I say own it, I mean I'm responsible for making sure it's protected and secure. People own their own data. But bringing it into one place, making it a repository, making it available for people to query, making it available so that you can use that to drive your business, make decisions, whether that's sales figures, whether that's analytics, whether that's looking forward into the predictive analytics. I'm responsible for looking at that. But we realised that our silos are starting to overlap. You know, and that's one of the things is who's running, what's that. We also realised there was new skill sets. You know, traditional IT people were now changing. We need people that understand the digital, people that understand the new channels, people that understand how you market to those channels, people that understand how we're going to change our websites to bring in social media, people understand what LinkedIn strategy is exactly, so we can link it to our own. Yeah. So those are new skill sets. And the other thing we realised is we had to start to integrate these different sources. We had to integrate the channels so that we can have a coherent and joined up conversation. And that led us to who owns the what roles. So yes, we can say, you know, we've got CIO there, we've got CMO, CDO is one you hear bandied about. If your CIO and CMO don't get on, or the chief marketing officer is in control of the data, you start to see these CDOs, which is chief. I've seen this one interchange, chief data officer or chief digital officer. But again, you see different names used for different things. But to me, the key where I come from on this, and I think it's quite complementary to the other thing you've been hearing, is the information, is the data. The data is key. We call ourselves recruitment consultants, we're actually a data business. Our data is our second biggest asset after our people. And what we did is said, well, what's clearly key is we need to take that data, and from that we'll get innovation. The data will drive new products. We quickly realised that we had all this information on candidates. We could work out, for instance, how many Java people are there in the UK. We know from the request that one of the top jobs is a data scientist. You know, what's a data scientist? It's a good old statistician in my old days. You know, it's a mathematics statistician who can look at data. And from that innovation and information, we can get competitive advantage. This is sort of highlighting how we've changed, and one of the things we had to do as a PLC, as an organisation looking at it, is saying, as you looked at those forces, we had to organise ourselves a bit better. So it never became about who owns the CIO and the CMO. What we had to do was put together a group. And originally when I formed this, it was about data. In fact, when I formed this, it was about data protection issues we had with candidate data in Germany. And we formed together a data working group, and in that group, we had the head of marketing, the head of legal, brought the head of security in, head of HR, head of our operations. We put them all together and we said, actually, we're going to talk about this data protection issue. And then what quickly came in is the forces started to play. So then we found we had a Twitter issue, we had people talking about us on Twitter and didn't like what they were saying about us, so then we had to start managing that. How do you manage that scenario? We realised that we wanted to use Facebook better. So how do you manage that scenario? We realised that we want to have a closer relationship with LinkedIn. How do we manage that? It's crossing our organisations and it's crossing the silos. So as a traditional company where you set yourself up as you've got to have a CIO, CFO, CMO, we quickly realised that actually these are crossing all of our areas. And so to counter that, we formed a group. So we formed the group. I chair it because it's about data initially, but increasingly it will be handed with the CMO as well. And so we're working quite closely and saying actually a lot of our challenges cover those areas, and we're finding that the CIO and the CMO in our organisations have to work very closely together because most of those are where the issues are. When we have a clear line at who's doing who's looking after the digital channel, which is clearly marketing, and who's looking after data, which is clearly me. And I think once you've got that delineation, the rest starts to fall into place. It will evolve. We don't think we've got the answers totally right, but it's working for us now, and it's working for us where we can see for the next 6 months. But we know that things will start to change. The one sure thing about our industry is everything's changing. The only constant is change. So you have to continually adapt. I think that's easy for us because our culture right at the start is we're quite entrepreneurial, so we're quite easy to change. We're quite willing to adapt. And I think that makes a big difference. So I think to finish off, I think this is quite, I use this, it's quite useful. It's quite useful when you go to your organisations to say, actually, these four forces, how are they playing? How are they playing into the organisation? And how do you adapt your organisation to those four forces? And how do you know? And who's stepping in to fill the gaps? And I think that's quite key. Why I think, I would argue CIOs are going to be here for a while, but not if they're just doing an IT director role. You have to have adapted. You have to be certainly looking after the information and the data. And I think if that information and data is playing into the other things you're hearing about, that's the key, and that's the secret. And that's my presentation. Thank you.